And today we are continuing to dig for the truth. We're trying to skip nonsense, we're trying to skip this and that and go straight for the truth. It's a little bit easier for me because I've been searching for some period of time now, and I already have things that helps. For example, I'm working from home for the last several months. It helps with connecting the dots. First of all, I wanted to finally introduce you to a little bit more information about the book Anastasia, the Reading Series of Russia. We went through a chapter in the previous video. Anastasia, grandfather, was giving us some very key information about creation, and specifically about the reading cedar and the power of that reading cedar, and the fact it's a battery in our creation that collecting high level energies and storing it so that whenever there is a dark day, meaning in the energy on the planet Earth, then the science of the creation is such that it can tap into that battery to use that energy that was stored in that tree. So please first listen to this 5-minute about Anastasia and the book that Vladimir Maigret wrote. If you want to skip it, just scroll to the next 5 minutes ahead of time, and we'll play the first video.
The Ringing Cedars of Russia. I exist for those for whom I exist. According to Anastasia, special combinations of letters and words are inserted into the text, which influence a man beneficially. You can feel these influences while reading it, when your hearing is not disturbed by sounds produced by artificial things and mechanisms. Natural sounds like the singing of birds, the sound of rain, the rustling of leaves in the trees help to produce positive influences. Anastasia is Book 1 of the Ringing Cedars book series. This series of 9 books tells the story of a remarkable woman named Anastasia, discovered in 1995 by a Siberian trader, Vladimir Maigret, while he was plying the waters of the remote Ob River. Anastasia was born in the forest in 1969 to parents who died tragically when she was just a baby. Living for the most part without warm clothes, food cultivation, or man-made shelter, she has survived on fruit, nuts, berries, and mushrooms brought to her by wild animals with which she lives in peaceful harmony. Maigret initially spent 3 days with Anastasia, during which time she displayed such astounding knowledge, power, and wisdom that he abandoned his business and, at her request, began writing this series. She told him she would encode the books with an energy that should cause them to sell in the millions. Despite his lack of writing experience, this is exactly what happened. It is Anastasia's ability to strike a chord in the heart of the reader that makes these books so very unusual. The purity and power of her words is provoking an outpouring of joy and hope in people from all walks of life. The series has sold over 11 million copies and has been translated into 20 different languages. Vladimir Maigret, author of the Ringing Cedars series. Vladimir Maigret, born in 1950, was a well-known entrepreneur from a Siberian city of In 1994. During a stop on a trading trip along the mighty Ob River, a Siberian elder told Vladimir Maigret about the existence of ringing cedars, sacred trees which can heal bodily diseases and elevate the human spirit. The elder told him of such a cedar growing. Intrigued but committed to his present venture, Vladimir Maigret later began to delve into literature on Siberian cedar trees and became one of the first Russian businessmen to rediscover the tremendous folk medicinal, nutritional, and commercial value of virgin oil pressed from Siberian cedar nuts. It seemed that knowledge of the secret techniques of pressing the oil had been lost. In 1995, determined to rediscover this secret and launch a highly lucrative production of cedar nut oil, Vladimir Maigret organized a second expedition along the River Ob. On this trip, however, an encounter with the elder's granddaughter, named Anastasia, transformed him so deeply that he abandoned his commercial plans, his trading business, and temporarily even his family, and instead went to Moscow to fulfill his promise to Anastasia to write a book about what she had shared with him. Anastasia had reassured him that his books would sell in the millions. True to her promise, Anastasia's messages in the Ringing Cedars series have spread like a raging wildfire across Russia and Europe, where news reporters are now writing about a new dawn unfolding and an eco-village revolution taking place, which may change the country's and the whole world's destiny. Vladimir Maigret could not have known that his 1994 to 95 trade trips would change his entire life and affect the whole of humanity. Yet this appears to be the inevitable impact of his discovery of Anastasia and her remarkable messages for the world, as chronicled in the Ringing Cedars series. Now, English readers are excitedly devouring these books, with more than 100,000 copies sold already, and bookstores claiming these books are flying off the shelves. A wave of excitement is now sweeping the English-speaking world as every day hundreds more readers discover his books. Vladimir Maigret presently lives near the city of Vladimir, Russia, 240 kilometers east of Moscow.
People have been living on the earth for billions of years. Everything on the earth was created perfect, right from the start. Trees, blades of grass, bees, and the whole animal world. There is a direct connection between everything living on the earth and the entire universe. The apex of creation is man. And in the great pristine harmony of all things, man was created harmonious. Man's purpose is to learn about all his surroundings and create perfection in the universe. To create the likeness of the world of the earth in other galaxies. And with each new creation of his to add more splendor to earthly creations. The way will open for man to create on other planets when man is able to overcome temptation. When man is able to hold in unity the grand and diverse energies of the universe inherent in himself, and when he does not allow one of them to take precedence over the rest. The day when the whole earth is a paradise garden will mark the opening of the path of creation in the universe. And once man becomes aware of the whole harmony of the earth, he will be able to contribute his own splendor. Man takes it upon himself to take account of his actions once in every million years. Whenever he makes a mistake, whenever he allows one of the many diverse energies he contains to dominate at the expense of the rest, a global catastrophe takes place. Then everything starts again from the beginning. This has happened many times. One of mankind's million-year periods may be divided into 3 ages. First, the Vedic age. Second, the age of the image. And third, the age of the occult.
I want to comment really quick. So every million years, it's like a cycle on our planet, and it can be divided in 3 sections. First section is 990,000 years. Second section is 9,000 years, and the third section is 1,000 years. Let's continue.
The first age of human society on the earth, the Vedic, lasts 990,000 years. During this age, man lives in paradise like a gladsome child, maturing under parental care. During the Vedic age, God is known to man. All God's feelings are inherent in man, and through them man is able to obtain any advice he needs directly from God. And if man should suddenly make a mistake, God is free to correct it simply by giving a hint without disturbing the general harmony or infringing on man's freedom in any way. In the Vedic age, man does not raise questions about how or by whom the world, the universe, the galaxies, along with his marvelous planet called Earth, were created. Everyone is completely aware that everything around, either visible or invisible, has been created by their Father, namely, God. The Father is everywhere. All that grows and lives are his living thoughts, his program. And one can use one's own thought to commune with the Father's thoughts. And one can contribute to his program, provided one first understands it in detail. During the Vedic age, man did not bow down before God, nor was there the multitude of religions which sprang up afterward. There was a culture to life. People lived a divine way of life. There were no diseases of the flesh. Feeding and clothing himself in a divine manner, man simply did not think about food and clothing. Thought was otherwise occupied with the excitement of discovery, and no rulers reigned over human society. There were no boundaries marking off states as today. Human society on the earth consisted of happy families. The various continents were inhabited by families. They were all united by their aspiration to create a space of splendor. There were many new discoveries, and each family, upon making a splendid discovery, felt the need to share it with others. Families were formed by the energy of love. And everyone was fully aware that a new family would create one more oasis of splendor on their native planet. There were many rituals, holidays, and carnivals among the people of the Vedic age, each imbued with great meaning, sensitivity, and a conscious awareness of the real divine existence on the earth. Each ritual served as a grand school and a grand examination for each man that took part in it, an examination in the eyes of others, in the eyes of oneself, and consequently, in the eyes of God. The secret war with Vedic Rus is. The war with Vedic Rus began long before Jesus' appearance on the earth, long before the fall of Rome. This 1,000-year war was not waged with iron swords. Occultism executed its military raids on a non-material plane. Preachers of the occult religion came to Russia. Dozens of their names are mentioned in various ecclesiastical books, but they actually numbered in the tens of thousands. They were not to blame for their ignorance. They were fanatics, which means their mind was unable to fathom even the millionth part of creation. As foot soldiers to the priest, reverently carrying out his orders without so much as a murmur, they attempted to explain to people how to live. They tended to say exactly the same things they had said when preaching to once majestic imperial Rome. They tried introducing ritual and proposed the construction of temples instead of paying attention to nature or earthly existence. Then the kingdom of heaven would come for everyone. I shall not burden you by reciting their sermons. If you wish, you can still read their words. Today I shall tell you why for thousands of years they did not succeed in doing anything with Vedic Ruses. Every other person living in Rus at that time was a poet and a wit, and there were bards in Ruses. They were called bayans back then, and this is how it all took place in those times. For decades, the priests' foot soldiers waged a propaganda campaign to the effect that God had to be bowed down to. And here and there, people began to listen and reflect on the message. Upon seeing this, the Bayan would simply laugh and make up a parable, which he would then sing. And the parable would quickly spread throughout Rus. And over the next 10 years or so, Rus would have a good laugh at the priest's sermons.
Vedic Rus, it's a territory of Russia. It's talking about this last period of time, that 1,000 years, that 990,000 pass, then the 9,000 period of time pass, and then we're falling into this 1,000 years. And it's talking about the territory of Russia, Vedic Rus, that was the last island on the planet, the territory of Russia, where the culture was still on a higher level in people's thoughts and feelings. There was singers, every other. There was a culture behind it, and the system was coming in to disrupt it. Let's continue listening.
The priest was furious and launched new attacks. But once again in Ruses a parable would be born, and Ruses would laugh once more. Of all the many parables of those times, I shall tell you just three. In one of the many populated settlements on the earth, people went happily about their daily life. In this particular community lived 99 families. Each family lived in a splendid house decorated with fanciful wood carvings.
I wanted to point it out that at the end of 2013, I moved from Las Vegas to the city of Blue Diamond, a little bit off on the west side of Las Vegas. It is a completely separate little tiny city called Blue Diamond. And there is about 125 houses at that little region, little city or village, whatever you call it. So it's a little bit similar to what they're talking about in the story about 99 places or spaces of love that people had in that little village. Just a little note.
The garden around the house brought forth fruit every year in abundance. Vegetables and berries grew all by themselves. Every year people met the spring with joyful greeting and delighted in the summer. A series of cheerful friendship celebrations brought forth songs and korobats. In the wintertime, people rested from their daily exhilarations, and they looked up to the heavens and tried to decide whether they might be able to weave the moon and the stars into even better patterns.
So the mindset is pretty high level. People live in a great unity between each other, and they harvest on their land, and things are going well. The energy is at the peak, and here's what happened next.
Once every 3 years in July, those people gathered in a glade at the edge of their community. Once in every 3 years, God would respond to their questions in an ordinary voice. Even though he remained invisible to ordinary eyes, each one could feel him. And he, together with all the residents of the community, decided how best to build their life in the days to come. The people's conversation with God might be philosophical, but sometimes quite simple and even fanny. So, for example, one middle-aged man stood up and addressed God this way. "Come on now, God. For our celebration this summer, when we all gathered together with the dawn, you decided to drench us all with a monsoon? The rain poured down like a waterfall from heaven, and the sun began to shine only around noon. What? Did you sleep in till noon?" "I was not asleep," God replied. "At this morning's dawn, I thought about how to make your celebration truly glorified. I saw how some of you on their way to the celebration were too lazy to wash themselves with clean water. How so? Such reprobates would spoil the show with their appearance. And so I decided to first wash everyone, and then have the clouds sweep in and allow the rays of the sun to caress the water-washed bodies with tenderness." "Well, okay, if that is how—" the man agreed, brushing off food crumbs from his mustache and wiping the blackberry stains around his son's mouth. "Tell me, God," asked an elderly and pensive philosopher, "there are many stars shining in the sky overhead. What does their fanciful alignment mean? If I should select a star that is pleasing to my soul, and then when I get bored with my earthly life, could I remove there with my family?"
So they're having a gathering within their community every 3 years, and God is present there with them, not in any form. Everybody can feel him, and they can ask questions, and there is a back and forth communication, and it's unity. It's working. So the communication is the same way as we speak with our physical father on that level. Let's see what else go on with that communication, with that conversation.
"If I should select a star that is pleasing to my soul, and then when I get bored with my earthly life, could I remove there with my family? The alignment of the heavenly bodies twinkling in the dark tells about the life of the whole universe. An alertness in your soul, but without tension, allows you to read the book of the heavens."
Twinkling of the stars, speaking about the life and the entire universe. Do you catch that? All right, let's go on.
"This book will not open for idleness or curiosity, but only for pure and meaningful thoughts. And yes, you can settle on a star.
And each of you can choose for yourself a planet in the heavens. There is only one condition that you must observe. You must become capable of producing on your selected star creations more perfected than those produced on the Earth. A very young girl jumped up from the ground and tossed her light brown braid of hair over her shoulder. Raising her little face with its turned-up nose heavenward, she placed her hands saucily on her hips and suddenly declared to God, "I have a complaint to make to you, God. For 2 years now I've waited patiently to tell you about it. Now I shall tell you. Some kind of disorder or abnormality is taking place on the Earth. All the people are living as people, falling in love, marrying, and being happy. But am I to blame for something? Every year, just as soon as spring arrives, my cheeks break out into freckles. There is nothing that'll wash them off, and I can't paint them over. Did you think this up as some kind of a joke, God? I demand that as of next spring, not a single freckle ever appears on my face again. Oh, my daughter, those are not facades, but spring speckles that appear on your beautiful little face each spring. But I shall call them as you wish. If you find your freckles to be such an annoyance, I shall remove them come next spring." God answered the spunky girl. But then a handsome young lad got up at the other end of the glade and meekly addressed God, though not in a loud voice. "We have a lot of work ahead of us in the springtime. You, God, try to take part in everything we do. Why would you waste your time on removing her freckles? Besides, they are so beautiful that I cannot picture a more beautiful image than a young maiden with freckles in the spring." "So what am I to do?" God thoughtfully responded. The maiden asked, and I promised her. "What's this about what to do?"
Let's see what the girl response is in this conversation.
"You heard the people say it's not freckles, but other more important things that we should be concerned about. But while we're on the subject of speckles, I'd like to ask for 2 more, right here, on my right cheek, so that it's all symmetrical." God smiled. This was evident from the fact that all the people were smiling. Everybody knew that it would not be long before a new splendid family would be lovingly born into their community. So the people lived with God in that remarkable community, and then one day 100 wise men came to see them. The hospitable residents always greeted guests with all kinds of good things to eat.
So we've had an episode where happy community, things are going well, people gathering with God, chatting, smiling, everything is going great. And then the wise man came in. Let's see what happened.
The wise men tasted their splendid fruit and were amazed at its extraordinary flavor. Then one of them said, "Oh, people, what a splendid, orderly life you lead. You have abundance and coziness in every home. But your communication with God lacks sophistication. There is no glorification or adulation of deity." "But why?" the residents tried to protest in alarm. "We talk with God the way we talk with each other. We talk and reason with him every 3 years, but every day he rises with the sun. As a bee, he busies himself around the gardens, beginning in every spring. Every winter he covers the ground with snow. His tasks are clear to us, and we are glad for all the seasons." "You are doing things the wrong way," said the wise men. "We have come to teach you how to talk with God. All over the earth, an array of temples and palaces has been built in his honor, where people can talk with God every day, and we shall teach you to do the same." For 3 years, the residents of the settlement heeded the words of the wise men. Each of the 100 insisted on his own theory about how to best construct a temple to God, and what should be done in the temple each day. Each of the wise men had his own theory. The residents of the community had no idea which of the 100 wise theories they should choose. Besides, how could they choose without offending the wise men? And so they decided to heed them all and build all the temples proposed, one for each family. But there were only 99 families in the village, and there were 100 wise men. When they heard the decision of all the residents, the wise men became very concerned. It meant one of them would not get his temple built.
So the wise man pride sticking out. Clear example.
And would not receive the anticipated offerings. And they began arguing among themselves as to whose theory of worshiping God was the most effective. And they began dragging the residents into the dispute. The dispute heated up, and for the first time in many years, the villagers forgot about their time of communication with God. They did not gather as before in the glade on the appointed day. Another 3 years went by. 99 magnificent temples were scattered about the settlement, and it was only the villagers' huts that had lost their luster. Some of the vegetables lay uncollected on the ground, and the fruit of the garden began to become infested with worms. This is all because the wise men preached in the various temples. You do not have fall faith. Bring more and more gifts to the temple. Try harder and bow down to God more often. But there was one wise man, the one who had been left without a temple, who whispered first to one, then to another. You have been going about everything the wrong way, people. All the temples you have built are of the wrong construction. And you do not worship the right way in your temples. You are not saying the right words as you pray. I am the only one who can teach you how you can communicate with God every day. Just as soon as he managed to bring someone over to his side, a new temple would be erected, and one of the existing ones would fall into disrepair. And again, one of the wise men, the one newly deprived of the people's offerings, tried to surreptitiously slander the others in front of the villagers. A number of years passed. Then one day the people remembered about the gatherings they used to have in the glade where they heard God's voice. Once again, they gathered in the glade and began asking questions in the hope that God would hear them.
A little recap. People start listening to wise men. They tell them, you gotta bow down to God, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. They step off from their duties and from the established way of communication with their Father God, and start building all these temples. And there was one with a high pride that tried to twist things around because he didn't get the temple built. So it means that he's not gonna get the donations. So finally, people get to the point where, hey, we forgot about the gathering with God. Let's put it together. Let's get together with God once again, and we're gonna ask him a question: what went wrong? Let's see what happened.
Give an answer as before. Answer us. How did it happen that our gardens are bringing forth worm-infested fruit? And why do our vegetables no longer yield an abundant harvest every year? And why do people quarrel, fight, and argue amongst themselves, but cannot possibly choose the best faith? Tell us, in which of the temples we built for you do you dwell? For a long time, God did not answer their questions. And when a voice finally sounded in space, it was not a happy voice.
Give you an example from my personal life experience. I was living in this Blue Diamond place, the small place just like the one that in the story. And I was going through things that I described in a previous video right in the beginning, things that I was going through, and I was asking God questions, just like they asking God, what happened? Why this? Why that? I asked God, why things the way they are? A new creation. It just got deep. At times we just have to get all the way to the bottom of the situation, and not necessarily we're gonna go with the question when things are just going very good, but at that season of my life things went really down, so I was begging for an answer and for help, and just like they did, God didn't answer right away. God didn't answer my prayers for a little over a year, I would say, but when he answered, it was on time. Let's see what happened next.
It sounded weary. God answered those gathered, "My sons and daughters, the reason for the desolation in your houses and the gardens around them is that I am simply not able to do everything by myself. Everything has been designed by my dream, right from the start, in such a way that I can create splendor only in conjunction with you."
Wow. God is answering that he from the get-go designed this in a way that he cannot go against the original design or science behind creation. And he's explaining how he designed it. So let's go on.
"But you have in part turned away from your homes with their gardens. Creation is something I cannot ever manage on my own. There must be co-creation by the two of us together. Moreover, I want to say to you all, You yourselves include love and freedom of choice.
There has to be a co-creation, include love and freedom of choice as the main key ingredients. If we wanted to do things together and co-create and make things better or good or great. Let's go on.
And I am ready to follow your aspirations with my dream. But you must tell me, my dear daughters and sons, in which of the temples I am to dwell. Before me you are all of equal worth. So whereabouts should I reside so that no one feels left out? When you have decided on your own in which of the temples I should make my home, I shall be glad to follow your collective will. After responding to all with these words, God fell silent. The people of the once beautiful village are continuing their conflict even to this day. Their houses are filled with desolation and dust. Around them the temples rise higher and higher, even as the conflict grows bitterer and bitterer. Well, Anastasia, that is quite an unrealistic fairy tale parable you told.
Wow, right? Yeah, if we've been following here, it gets pretty deep here. And here the author of the book, he's getting back to Anastasia. They're having this conversation, and she's giving him this visual.
There must have been some pretty dumb people in that settlement. Didn't they realize that God wants to work with each one of them to care for their garden? Besides, you say that those dullards in the settlement are still arguing, even today. And where is that settlement? In what country? Can you tell me? I can. Then tell me. Vladimir, you along with people from different lands are living in this very settlement right now. Eh? Oh, I see. Precisely. We are the ones. We are still engaged in a dispute about whose faith is better, while our gardens are full of worm-infested fruit. Thus, the culture of our forebears was destroyed, and Rus's was plunged into religion. If the people had learnt genuine religion, purely Christian.
So, real quick note. So the force against Vedic Russia, or Ved Rus, back in the day, during that cold period in the beginning of this cycle, 1,000 years, after the rest of the world caved in with the system of the high priest that he was broadcasting out of his pride to the entire planet, Ved Rus cave in. Not right away. They was lost, as I say, on the planet. But things start shifting. And let's go on.
It is possible that life would have turned out differently. But the priest managed to inject his own twists into the Christian teachings, and the one religion became subject to various interpretations, and the Christian world became divided into a multitude of denominations, often in conflict with each other. The high priest spent a great deal of effort on Rus. In other places on the earth, people saw what he was doing and did not permit his preachers within their borders. Japan, China, and India did not become Christian, but the high priest won them over by another way. The age of occultism began 1,000 years ago. People all over the earth lived in the age of occultism, and are still living in it today. It lasts only 1,000 years. During the age of occultism, mankind is plunged into a world of unreality. Mankind begins to direct its tremendous store of diverse energies toward made-up images and abstract worlds existing beyond the boundaries of real life. The real world with its diversity receives less and less of the life-creating warmth of man. It maintains its existence only at the expense of past accumulation and its original charge from the divine.
It maintains the creation from the original charge of the divine and past years accumulation, which, as we know, one of the batteries, it's the reinseaters of Russia, that is designed by God as a battery. Whenever we get to particular situation, that reinseater is giving that energy out. So it's almost like we are driving the car with the generator broken, and so we just using the battery charge in this creation, It's just a today's state where we at.
Mankind ceases to fulfill its main purpose. It becomes dangerous for the universe, and planetary scale disasters take place. Today, all mankind still lives in the world of the occult, but that age ended in the year 2000. Of course, in reality, the name 2000 is a misnomer. You know yourself that only recently the traditional year count was radically changed. The latest temporal borderline represented the millionth anniversary of civilization on the Earth. And as always, a global disaster was slated to happen. More specifically, mankind was supposed to launch a new attempt toward populating the universe through its own perfection. But no disaster occurred during any year of the occult age. It took only 3 of the Vedic people who were not asleep to partially remove the soporific occult spells from people today. Remember how the hearts of those reading your books began to flutter and recall their love for the earth? They are still asleep, but the power of God's Vedic culture is coming back to them.
Okay, remember this section in the beginning of this video when the girl is doing introduction to the book Anastasia and Vladimir Maigret, author of the book. And right in the beginning of that, generated voice is talking about Anastasia that put combinations of words into the sentences that provoke positive feelings out of people. And she, from the get-go, from the beginning, put through that dream of hers that power so that that book would be written in a way to provoke those positive feelings. And it's mentioned that it's best to read with no background noises or artificial world, but the true real world, as birds singing or leaves on the tree shaking, things like that. And it's saying now that those feelings, that those words and sentences provoked, even that people were still at sleep, that love that went away, prevent that catastrophe that every other time before in the past, at the end of this each million years would happen, this time it did not happen. Let's go on.
God is gaining new hope. While still not fully awake, they, through their love, averted a disaster. Now it will not happen on our planet. Soon all people will come out of the hypnotic occult sleep. They will start coming back to reality. Are you surprised that mankind today is either asleep under a hypnotic spell or dwelling in an unreal world? You might wonder, how can that be? Here I am, and in the cities, both large and small, there are millions of people living. Cars go up and down the streets. You should not be all that surprised by my words, Vladimir. Think about it and judge for yourself. At what times, on what day, or at what hour do people actually live in a real world? Think, for example, how many different religions there are on the globe. They all have a different interpretation of man's being and the order of the universe, and each has its own set of rituals, distinct from the others. Let us say that there is indeed one religion which is truer than all the rest, but that would mean that the worlds the rest of them are creating are unreal. But after all, people believe in them too. And if they believe, they live in submission to the laws of the unreal world. All over the earth, greater and greater numbers of people are wanting to have more money. But what is money? It is simply a convention. People think that everything can be bought with money. That is an illusion. No amount of money can buy the true energy of love, or a mother's feelings, or one's motherland, or the taste of fruit intended only for the one who grew it with mindful attention. As a convention, money can be used only to buy conventional, conditional love, along with a multitude of soulless things around. But in the process, you are dooming your soul to a state of loneliness. In the occult millennium, mankind is completely disoriented as to the space created by God, and people's souls simply flounder about as though in darkness. Look closely, Vladimir. Just over the past 100 years in the country where you live, look how society has kept changing its direction.
I wanted to let you know that during this video, AI generated voice messed up about 4 words, but it did it in such a way that every one of those 4 words was very meaningful. So when you go through it and you hear something isn't right, please reflect on that mistake with that particular word and you will get what I'm saying. About co-creation and about the world that we're in, God didn't just want it to create together. He built it into creation that he put together for us out of his dream, that he cannot go against that original rule or law that he put it under. For example, co-creation, what could that be? Well, I'm in a tree service field. So as a gardener, I would go and trim a tree by making it look nicer, by taking some weight off the tree so that whenever wind comes in, it will just go easy through the tree without creating that sailing effect. And dead branches, those branches no longer serve in the tree. I go in and I gently remove those without harming the main trunk, gently. And you look a step back and the tree is beautiful. And it is better than what God originally intended it to be. Well, it gets to the point where after 22 years, God created hands out of me for his own purposes so that I can go in and remove some things out of people's minds. And I'm doing it strictly by him, and I'm asking him to guide me every single time so that I don't rub onto the living branch. You know what I mean here. So we're in a creation that guarded and that put together with laws of energy, just like a video game put together because the word computer program was put in such a way that it created the video game. Well, this life, just like when I set up the tree service, I have all the parties and we figure out how we exchange things. Because in universe, everything is done by energy exchange. It's a God's currency. That's why on the currency we say, in God we trust, meaning that we value his energy and his currency above money. Well, we have an example where with the Statue of Liberty, for example, it was a clear torch with a fire in it. But then the other team came in and tried to change that whole meaning of what it represents, because it represents the spark in our hearts. And then they replace it with a golden torch, shiny golden torch, which takes the meaning of the whole Statue of Liberty completely off the cliff. It's important that we reflect on it, because if we do, we're not going to allow that to happen. But, for example, let's take that same Statue of Liberty. Back in the day, it took, I have a couple of notes here, it took about 9,042,677 pennies. Pennies made out of copper to create that Statue of Liberty out of copper. And by that time, that was equivalent of all the currency in pennies in the entire US, United States, in people's hands. And they did have difficulty collecting donations and putting the money together. So it gets to the point where 120,000 contributors gave less than $1, which in 2025-24 equivalent, it would be $35. So back then, 1885, 86, it was so $1, 120,000 contributors, most of whom gave less than $1, which is, we know, 100 pennies. And they donated 12 million pennies on average, a little bit above, to put together enough copper. So it took the entire currency, the entire copper out of the hands of the entire United States of people to create that creation, the Statue of Liberty, okay? And we can look at it, so the 120,000 people gave enough so that the other majority didn't have to give anything, because the 120,000 cover it. They gave. So if we look at each penny as the equivalent of energy, then in the creation where we live, that God put together for us, there's also energy exchange, and that energy has to come from somewhere. And we already know the grandfather of Anastasia was sharing with us about the significance of the reigning cedar, which grows 550 years and collect that energy, that very high level energy, and stores within itself, so that when there is a dark age or period of time on the planet Earth, it's as a battery gives it back. Well, where do we get the energy, like from the get-go? Like, so we are producers of that energy. Man produces that energy when he feels love or joy or the higher level feel. And Jesus mentioned to us, for as long as I am in the world, there is plenty of light. He didn't say that when I'm not in the world, you have a responsibility to, keep up with it. He was hoping that we would pick up on it. And then he also said that for as long as the day, we must be energetically at work for the one that sent me, for our Father. So there is a requirement for us, there is a bar that it's best, not necessarily all of us, just like with the example of Statue of Liberty, not necessarily everybody had to donate amount of pennies, but there had to be enough people to give enough to put the Statue of Liberty together. So, well, we know from the Bible 144,000 spirits coming and manifesting at this time on the planet Earth. So we can try this simple math. Let's say there is 8 billion people living on the planet today. We're going to divide it by the 144,000. We're going to have 55,555. So another way of saying, one son of God or daughter of God can produce by simply keeping the God's bar in the energy, firewall, I call it, with commandments. If you follow those commandments, then you keep in that bar, you donating, you emitting, you giving enough energy to sustain creation that would help 55,555 people that do not keep that bar. I'm not saying sinners, I'm not going there. They just do not keep that bar for whatever reason, just like the people that was donating for the Statue of Liberty, 120,000 gave, and the rest of them didn't give, but it was not matter. The goal was achieved. So we just came out from this 1,000-year period of time, and we start awakening to what's going on. It's not that I'm giving this information that it's like new. it's new for this period of time because we must realize, and Jesus showed us example, dying on the cross at the horrific pain, feeling that love toward creation and us against the circumstances, because it was important to energetically produce that energy, because others did not understand. But I'm telling you, as the sons and daughters of God, we are responsible for the house of God that we're in. And maybe for some of you it sounds like a little bit too much right now. Well, listen to it a couple times. It will get to you. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just saying how things are. And let's look into it a little bit deeper. For example, now you maybe pick up on the fact why, if you are close to Jesus, for example, on this scale, you're in the middle somewhere. Jesus is right here, his mindset, you're like in the middle somewhere. You can now understand why you are so much attacked. Okay, so we're comparing the creation of Statue of Liberty and creation that God put together for us that we're living in. And with Statue of Liberty, it took about a little over 9 million pennies. So on the planet today, about 8 billion people. From the Bible, we know that about 144,000 God sends for this time for special mission. So if we divide 8 billion by 144,000, it will come down to 55,000 plus, which means one of the quality spirit that comes in out of that 144,000 emit enough of that love, donate that energy to help God sustain creation on the level that another 50,000 don't have to. The ones that are short with the God's bar, within 10 commandments, for example. So you should pick up on the comparison, right? The Statue of Liberty. And it's interesting, Statue of Liberty, we're talking about the copper pennies. And then when we're talking about people, pennies sounds like a penis. Well, okay, let's say dicks, whatever. And then all we know about this movement, delusional with transgender, they wanted to cut people's dicks. So it's a contradicting the requirement and the energy to sustain this creation, because we don't want to dropping too much below the level necessarily. We've been doing it all along. That's why we just came out from this occult period of time, that 1,000 years. But it's time for us to start learning that it's not just a law that God gave us, it is a requirement and the energy so that we can follow and make sure that things going well, going up, not down. And then interestingly, that I think that God and Jesus, they have great sense of humor. On the Easter, we're making the eggs colorful with things on them, and then we go and so what it is about eggs? Well, just like a nuclear station, the previous video I started with talking about that my mom died because of the accident with the nuclear station in Chernobyl. So there are requirements for that nuclear station to produce the power as far as maintenance go. So they was short on rods that go in almost twice as much. They was short to maintain what was going on, and it's kaboom. So we don't want that to happen with our creation that we are living in. So we wanted to learn that science. And God is inviting us, and we're catching on to some points. For example, Anastasia helped the Vladimir McGrath write the book that is stir up the feelings. And it was just mentioned that even that people still asleep, that feeling produce that energy that comes back, I call it life force, and gives enough life for our planet and for all of us in abundance. So we want to keep it that way. So the delusions and the nonsense that's still going on while we are coming out from this 1,000 years, well, we're already 25 into positive 25 years, but we're still awakening from that delusion that we are walking away now. And then there are some transgender campaign to cut dicks, so that has to stop. It's contradicting the requirement for the energy here. Then there's the chemical trails that blocking the sun. Well, whenever we emit that energy, it reflects back from the sun and comes back within less than a second. It happens. Comes back and gives life to everything on the planet Earth. And then there's somebody putting a layer of chemical artificial clouds, and it's been going on for almost 20 years, maybe plus. So that's extra clue. We wanted to look into that. And then movie Matrix, the first movie Matrix, I believe it was a great success. I believe every other one was kind of pulling people away from the truth of the first one by making it more complicated to follow. But in the first Matrix, for example, we learn about human being the battery for technology, whatever. Well, in the real world, that movie would never come out if they didn't put a twist on it like that. In the real world, we are the battery, but if we learn how to manage that energy, we can keep it all to ourselves. We don't have to give it to the race of the fallen angels that's been reincarnating here, and we don't have to give them a bite of it. We are the landlords. This is our place, if we choose to. So then, why are men in Ukraine put in the meat grinder? Well, average Ukrainian or Russian man produce high levels of that necessary energy to sustain creation that we are living in, simply because those are human DNA. Ved Rus, the territory of Russia, was the last territory on the planet Earth 1,000 years ago that caved into the system. The rest of the planet caved into the system, but Ved Rus. And the majority of the people that live there have original DNA and the spark of God, and it is not mixed up DNA from different races. For example, dragon race or reptilian race. During the last thousands of years, those mixed up. So if you are affecting the real true DNA human, you cutting off that life force energy from being able to produce, because they're killing them. So I invite you, all of you that have ability to think things through once again, because it looks very suspicious that for what's going on, all we see is that without real military strategy, the people captured off the streets and put in the grinder almost immediately, and then you never ever see them again. So it's contradicting things. If we are within the house of God and there are different rooms representing different countries and there's different energy levels, well, if we're going to be shutting down the living room because there's the most light there, I mean, we living in the same house. So I invite you to think about it. Some of you that work in science, I would like you to dig deeper of what I just presented to you. Jump on those facts that I dig out for you. There's 4 series of this digging the truth that we put together so far, and things will come back to good balance. In Jesus' name. Thank you, everybody. We cover a lot of ground today. Great job. Now get some coffee and look at it once again so that it can stick. See you again soon.